Good morning. Welcome to Friday Morning Live with Dr. Jen. Let me know when you come on and make a comment as to where you're coming on from. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll be looking. So, for today's live, we're going to talk about 5 hidden causes of insulin resistance. So, I often, this week especially, have been in several discussions about the most important thing to do to improve insulin sensitivity, and which I will discuss what that means and why it's important. But I thought it was an important time to a great subject to discuss around this time of year, especially because we may not be following the regular pattern of eating, and I want to share some ways that we can actually optimize that without interfering with the fun, because I'm all about joyful wellness. So for those of you that know, I'm Dr. Jen, Jennifer Davis. I'm a pediatrician, pediatric critical care physician, and lifestyle medicine specialist, and I focus on joyful medicine because I think that the connection between joy and health is really important and often overlooked. And that in order to maintain healthy habits, which is what I help people do, it is important to find the joy in them and find the joy in everyday life in order to find purpose and longevity. And these are intimately connected. And I think it's really important that we address that. Um, so let's talk about it, insulin resistance. So wait a couple of minutes because it's not quite 9 o'clock yet. But if you, one more minute, if you have diabetes or prediabetes, you may have heard this term, but maybe if you don't, you may not have heard this term. So insulin is that hormone that actually helps glucose go into the cell. We need glucose in our body. Many of our organs need glucose. All of our organs need glucose to function. They give the energy to our mitochondria, and our mitochondria are what give us energy, help all of the functions in our body occur. So when our bodies are functioning well and our insulin isn't working well, then glucose isn't able to get into the cell, and that results in many sequelae. One of those may be feeling like you have no energy, you might feel sluggish, might show up as cravings, and other things. So when the insulin isn't working, it also can raise your blood sugar, which eventually will lead to diabetes or prediabetes first, then eventually diabetes. But the great thing is there are many things that we can do to improve this. And so, so insulin resistance develops when the cells in our body are not sensitive to insulin anymore. And that happens mainly due to fat getting inside of the cell. And when that happens, the insulin, which is normally the key that opens the door for glucose to get in the cell, our insulin stops working properly. And when that happens, gradually our glucose will rise. First, our insulin rises to try to help. And when our insulin rises, it causes many things around our body, causes increased fat deposition, which can lead to worsening insulin resistance, and it causes that cycle. But it also can, have other sequelae around our body. But the importance is that we can actually improve insulin resistance, and this is important for people with diabetes, prediabetes, and or even just it sometimes happens. If you have midlife weight gain, especially in women as our hormones shift, it may be because of mild insulin resistance. And so it's important to be able to manage this properly. Often the way that we manage this struggle with midlife weight gain or with worsening insulin resistance, prediabetes, is we talk about calories. We talk about carbohydrates, limiting carbohydrates, increasing protein. So that's one of the first causes, actually, of worsening insulin resistance. So I will say that what happens when we focus solely on increasing protein or low carbohydrate diet, what happens is a lot of times that high protein also has high fat, and that can compound the insulin resistance. So in the short term, we may see some short-term results with weight loss and improvement. But in the long term, that's going to worsen the insulin resistance, and our insulin levels will continue to rise. So ultimately, the goal is to increase the fiber in the diet. And actually, that's what I usually coach my patients on, is focus on fiber, not protein. And when you do that, you improve many functions in the body with lower inflammation. They actually trigger the natural GLP-1 pathway, which I'm sure you've heard about those drugs that are out there everywhere. Our body has a natural GLP-1 system. And by focusing on fiber, increasing the fiber in your diet, you can actually trigger that system, which will improve insulin sensitivity. It will also support your gut health. It's for so many other organs in your body. So that's my first anti-tip. Increase the fiber instead of focusing on protein. Another big one is I usually focus on what you should do instead of what you should eliminate, but I have to mention the ultra processed foods. This comes up a lot because many of the patients that I see are focusing on this higher protein, but often when doing that, they're also adding some ultra processed high protein foods. And we think that those foods are better because they have higher protein. Unfortunately, with ultra processed foods, they tend to have higher sugar, they have higher fat from oils, they have high salt, so they can compound this insulin resistance. So I say go focus on whole unprocessed foods, or if you're eating a food that comes in package, recognize that it's not necessarily because it's labeled high protein or low carb that it's not necessarily healthy. So including it is fine, but making sure that you're getting the mainstay of things that are nourishing and do support your health. And that way those things aren't taking, we're not treating them as if they are the thing that we need to have. They are an extra. And that's a really important fact. So I think limiting ultra processed foods as much as possible. I would never say not have your favorite thing, but focusing again on having those healthy, high fiber foods as be the center or the mainstay of what you consume. Um, so now we get into the things that we don't often talk about. Sleep is a really big, has a really big component. A lot of times, especially in midlife, our sleep may be disturbed, or even when we're younger, we think that, oh, I'll catch up on my sleep later. But you know what? Your body keeps score. So when that happens, that means that it actually worsens our insulin resistance and can result in, compounding this problem over time. So sleep, everybody adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I know I myself in the past thought, oh, I can function on 6 hours, I can function on 5 hours, but your body keeps score. So your body knows what it needs during our sleep. So many things happen other than rest. Our restorative processes happen within our bodies. And when we don't sleep, it's our body sees that as stress. So it elevates our cortisol. It increases inflammation and again can worsen that insulin resistance. So sleep, protect your sleep at all costs. If you have a problem with sleep, definitely discuss it with your healthcare provider. So another one is chronic stress and nervous system regulation. With these devices that we have, I happen to have two of them in front of me right now. We are constantly connected, and the technology is a stressor for our bodies. So we are meant to really respond to the cues of nature, not to notifications on our phone or these other artificial stimulations. So this does take a toll. It does cause chronic stress for our body, and it affects our ability to regulate our own nervous system, which can in turn affect our cravings. It can affect our ability to make good decisions about food. And again, that chronic stress can worsen insulin resistance through many different mechanisms. Um, So the last one is sedentary. So sedentary lifestyle. So I'll talk about some movement is really important. That is one of the things when we move after meals, we focus on maybe even a 10-minute walk after meals, that actually improves our insulin sensitivity. But when we're sedentary, when we're not moving, our bodies are meant to move. That's how our metabolism works better. It's how it helps the brain function better, helps our blood flow to our organs. And when we're not moving in a regular pattern throughout the day, that can worsen our insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. And it's really important to note that though we may work out in the morning, like I did had a little 20-minute workout, but if I sit for the rest of the day, it's just as bad or maybe even worse. So thinking about where you can engineer movement throughout your day is really important. So those are the five main things or other things that you could do to improve your insulin sensitivity or avoid or worsening insulin resistance. And the beauty of it is that all of these things are within our control. So often we feel like if we have, say, diagnosis of prediabetes or diabetes, or maybe you're struggling with midlife weight, if we start to focus on these things, then we can really make a difference. And so often there are so many medications out there that can be helpful, and sometimes working in conjunction with taking medications and using this to enhance how medications work. But in some cases, if it's early, you're able to avoid medication altogether by doing these simple things. And that's what I like to focus on, how we can incorporate these things, these daily habits, and have them support our health for the long term. So if you are looking for support, I will say that I have a $10 community I just launching here for Black Friday week, focused on helping people improve their metabolism, improve their health, and with a side effect of weight loss. I call it um, joyful weight and wellness. So, looking at the ways that we can incorporate these lifestyle habits and use them every day, and how we could build on them to build healthy habits that will sustain us for the long term, not just a lot of times we look at diets as a way to improve, like I mentioned in the first tip, that, cutting carbs or increasing your protein that will give you short-term effects, but for the long term, how it affects your health is not necessarily good for your longevity in the long term. A lot of times these quick diets or these quick fixes can have a detrimental effect, down the line. So that's all I have to share for today. Hopefully you'll join me next Friday morning at 9 a.m., same time. Joyful Wellness, Joyful Medicine with Dr. Jen. See you then.